She called my name. This story was shared with me by my mom and aunt while we were talking about paranormal experiences we have had. Also, this story really happened and was reported by the local news stations in the 1970s. My aunt still has the newspaper clipping of this story. Because my family still knows the family that this happened to, out of respect to that bond, I will be using fake names to protect the survivors from having to relive this horrific incident. Anyway, my mom and her siblings grew up in a very strict Southern Baptist home. My grandparents had rules in place that would have drove any sane person into the depths of depravity, despite the fact that my grandpa had another family across town. A story for a different time. As I was saying, my mom had a strict upbringing. So she and my aunt, her closest sister of the bunch, would sneak out of the house sometimes when my grandparents were not paying attention or were asleep. They shared a room, so they had go to their room and climb out of the window. During one of these excursions, at the time my mom was 17 and my aunt was 15, had two friends that were less than savory they had known from elementary to high school. One of the friend was Brandy, and the other was Lisa. A little background on these two. Brandy was also from a very strict home, so at the tender age of 16, she decided to leave her parents' home, drop out of school, and move in with a well-known neighborhood pimp. Against her parents' wishes, she started using drugs and prostituting after this relationship began. Unlike Brandy, however, Lisa was basically an orphan. She had been on her own ever since my mom and aunt had known her, and she knew things well beyond her 16 years. So one evening, after sneaking out to meet with Brandy and head over to her house to get high on marijuana, my mom and aunt witnessed her pimp boyfriend beating her about a John, complaining to him about her not properly pleasing him, so the pimp threatened to kill her. My mom says they were scared because Brandy, though only 16, was also a mom at the time to a 1-year-old son. Luckily he lived with her parents, but she loved him very much, went to check on him every day, according to my mom. Brandy's son was her world, so they did not want the pimp to hurt her and take her away from her son. This account is important to the story. It was not the first time they had seen him hit her, but they never saw him this enraged. Lisa finally arrived to Brandy's house, and they all proceeded to get high. Lisa then tells Brandy that she fears for her safety and that she should consider leaving her pimp. But Brandy seemed unfazed and said he was just having a bad day. Well, after getting high, my mom and aunt hurried back home before my grandparents wake up and realized they were gone. The next day my aunt called Brandy, but got no answer. This was the 70s, cell phones did not exist, so landline was the only means of communication. According to my aunt, this was not unusual behavior for Brandy. She may have been out turning tricks for an entire day, but they always kept in touch. My mom and aunt did not agree with her dropping out of school and selling herself, but they never judged her because they had known her since childhood. Well, the next day my grandma get a phone call from Brandy's mom. She's hysterical, and my grandma can barely make out what she's saying. After my grandma gets her to calm down, she tells my grandma that Brandy is dead and that her pimp boyfriend had murdered her. The newspaper reported the story as follows, summarized. Brandy had been out hustling the night before for her pimp boyfriend. Something went wrong when a John complained that he was not satisfied with her services, and the pimp lost his temper. He became enraged and went to his truck, pulled out a 12-gauge shotgun, chased Brandy down, and when she tripped and fell in a playground, shot her in the neck at close range, killing her instantly. Needless to say, after hearing the news, my mom, aunt and their other friend Lisa were devastated. Brandy's mom knew how close they were and let them pick out Brandy's burial outfit. Unfortunately, Lisa herself was also murdered about 2 years after Brandy in a similar fashion. That is a story for a different time. Here's the paranormal part. After the funeral, my mom and aunt would go and visit Brandy's son and spend time with him and her parents. One night about a month after the funeral, my mom was lying in bed crying about everything that had happened to Brandy and how she wished she could say goodbye to her. It was quiet in my grandparents' home. My mom and aunt had stopped sneaking out so often, and my aunt was in her bed fast asleep. My mom says she then heard a voice call her name from outside her bedroom window, Melanie. Melanie. She said she was startled at first because usually it was very quiet that time of night in their neighborhood. Well, she wiped her eyes, put on her glasses and looked out the window, And to her surprise, it was Brandy, standing on the lawn right under her bedroom window. Brandy said, "You will always be my best friend and I love you," before turning around and vanishing. My mom told my aunt the next day, and a few years later told Brandy's parents. They believed my mom and they remained close until her parents passed away. Despite his rough start and upbringing, Brandy's son did his mom proud and went on to become very successful. He's in his 40s now with a family of his own. My family is still close with Brandy's siblings, cousins, son, etc. to this day. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button to support my work. And as always, enjoy the fear, my dear.